Greetings, everybody. My name is Phindile Ngcongo. We'll be discussing the topic mental health today. Now, I want us to look at this description that is given by the World Health Organization around mental health, which is it's a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his own or her own abilities and can cope with the normal stresses of life and can work productively and fruitfully and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Now, the scripture link for this is Romans 12, verses 2, which reads thus, "Do not conform yourself to the standard of the world, but be renewed or transformed by the renewing of your mind." Now, mental health includes ability to enjoy life and to create a balance between the activities and the effort to active psychological resilience. Now, when we look at that, a lot of factors that contribute or towards that will be your cultural differences. It will be your personal assessment, subjective assessment of who you are, how you feel, how self-aware are you of your surroundings and of your behavior, of your thought patterns. And then we'll be looking at your competing professional theories. All these factors affect one's inability to have a sound mental health. Now, I want us to look at a description that is given by public health around mental health, which I feel is the more core of what we should focus on. So public health describes mental health as an individual's capacity to feel, to think, and then to act in ways to achieve a better quality of life whilst respecting the personal, the social, and the cultural boundaries. Now, if this three things, the feeling, the thinking, and the action, are affected or impaired, it then leads to mental disorders. Hence, we see a lot of trend where people are called, they are depressed, the personal mental disorders such as schizophrenia. It's because their actions and their thinking are not in line. This means it's either they're excessively expressed or they're underly expressed. Now, when we look at the word feel, I love looking at the description of the word because it gets us to understand how are we supposed to understand the concept of everything. So the dictionary describes feeling as being aware of a person or an object through touching or being touched. So you're aware of whatever is in front of you or whatever is stimulating you to make you feel. And then it also describes as the experience of an emotion or a sensation. So sensation will be a touch, whether someone touches you light or someone is pressing hard, or it's more of a tougher, like a heating. That's also part of the sensation. And then the last one is having a belief or impression without identifiable reasoning. So when we feel, normally when we grow up, we are not taught how to feel. You feel your understanding and expression of how you feel. Culturally, I know in the black culture, a child is not allowed to express how they feel. And then they grow into that environment and culture of feeling insecure in expressing how they feel. Now, we are also not taught to venture between the positive feeling and the negative feelings. And that becomes a risk factor when we grow into our adult life where we can't channel both. You know, a lot of what we feel is influenced by external factors, things like love. We see when Valentine's Day, everyone is feeling love. But do you understand the concept of love? Do you understand what you are feeling and how are you feeling? We see a lot of people being happy when they're given money. Is money supposed to make you feel happy? Are you happy because you are going to spend? Or are you happy because you have money? Being able to identify the feeling associated with the factor is also a very important thing. Now, again, I'm going to relate now and again with the pandemic. We've seen a lot of death. And we know that death is always associated with mourning and grieving. But I love how people have taken the concept of also turning it around and celebrating life. Now, we've managed to look at the positive aspect of feeling, which we choose to feel the positive impact that that person has contributed towards your life, as opposed to always being miserable and grieving. So it has then changed our thought patterns and allowed us to be able to feel, which is something we don't naturally do. Most of the time, we are made to be attentive of how we feel when you've acted. And now we have to take responsibility of our actions. But when we stop and think, how do I want to feel? Then we have control of the state of how we choose to feel. When people come and with aggression towards you, you choose to feel the aggression, and then your reaction is actually in line with how you are feeling. And then we're going to proceed and just look at how we think. Or before we do that, I just want to say it is very important to feel. And it's not a bad thing to feel weak. Oftentimes we are made to feel bad because we're feeling weak. I know it's also more on the gender roles where men are taught to be tougher and providers. But it's okay to feel vulnerable and say, I'm actually at my weakest point right now. I'm actually feeling hurt right now. We are not exposing you to your failure. It's not a failing thing. It's just a negative space you are feeling in. Then when you are aware of how you're feeling, then you learn to say, how do I want to think about that? How do I then channel my feelings and towards the people that are around me, towards the environment and what I'm responsible of? Am I accountable to what I'm feeling? How is my understanding of what I'm feeling? And then we move into thinking. Now, the dictionary expressed thinking as having an opinion, a belief, or an idea about something or someone. So you've thought about it. Now you're thinking about it after feeling it. You have to think about how you feel. If someone says they love you, you have to think about that feeling of love before engaging into an action. It's very important to find yourself, find space, find time, understand where you are in life, and think about everything. Connect that feeling to almost everything that is happening around you, and find a reasoning so that you can process a valid action towards that. Now, the dictionary always also describes thinking as the use of one's mind actively to form connected ideas. I thought that was so relevant because ideas come through thinking. And I want to challenge you to start looking at a lot of scriptures that talk about thinking and understand what God says to us around our thought patterns, because they influence a lot of our actions. Most of the times we barely want to think, but we are quick to act, which is a skill we should try and learn. And then we look at action. Action is described as a fact. It's a process of doing, typically to achieve an aim. Action is also a way in which something works or moves. And then the other description says action is an armed conflict. It means it is a doing. It means something pushes you to do that. Now, most of the time we act without thinking. We act out of the feelings that we have. We act out of hurt. We act out of being agitated. Then our anger then comes out in action. Most of the time when we look at the three concepts, we see someone, and let's take a relationship as an example, where people exchange and express love, but there's a lot of abuse happening. What is happening there? There's no feeling and communication, but there's a lot of actions, which then draws us to the scripture that says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. You can speak love, but your actions can be different. But then your actions reflect of what you have in your heart. Just think about that. So we ought to be genuine about how we're feeling. We ought to relate. If we are now in the times where we want to celebrate death, that's also okay. I don't think it's something we should feel bad and feel squashed, that we should always grieve. We should always be hurt when it comes to the issues of death. I think it's high time we also celebrate, because we understand that we are living on borrowed times. We do understand that a lot of the memories that we share are good memories. Then it helps us to then channel our thought pattern and balance the thinking, balance the positive and the negative feelings around it. We are faith-based, and we're people of hope, And our hope is always in God. The same God who allows us to be challenged and gives us a lot of solutions. So God himself allows us to be vulnerable, and he makes it okay because he's there to also restore and repair and give you joy. So it's okay to actually feel weak at times, because in those weaknesses you then identify, how do I want to act? That is where you start looking at where are my strengths? What can I improve on? You know, I always challenge people to always try and think, which is something because we are so surrounded by such busy schedule, a lot is happening around us, we barely take time to sit and think and then act appropriately. Find beauty in being vulnerable. There is a lot of power in being broken. When you're broken, you're able to stop and think. When you're broken, you're able to mind how you act as well. You know, there is a scripture that talks about a woman that broke the perfume, and there was a beautiful fragrance. When in the ability of that bottle being broken, imagine the smell, the aroma that came out of that. I always say it is in that you see your potential, is in you understanding your weaknesses and feeling them, and then taking necessary actions around it. You know, society in our days endorses being independent, but how many times do we get the description of what independence is? How many times do we get to understand that? Is it positive? Is it a negative? Is it an issue of power? How do we feel about being told that we are independent? How do we understand it and relate it to our circumstances every day? You know, we ought to find the balance between independent and partnering with people so that we can have better qualities of our lives. I think there is an imbalance there where people want to be independent. At the same time, they're challenged to also participate and partner with other stakeholders. You know, and as I wrap up, I just want to bring you guys to awareness that if you find it hard to deal with how you feel, you need to seek help. There are people, there are churches, there are pastors, there are professional people, counselors, social workers, psychologists who can help you to then say, I'm in this environment and I'm realizing that I'm overwhelmed with feelings, you know, and then they can help you channel those feelings appropriately so that you can act accordingly. And if your thoughts are overwhelming, you also need to seek help. We're living in challenging times. A lot has been happening. Some of us are unable to even adapt. Seek help so that you can have a solution and have a better life. If you're unable to also act accordingly, which is a big part, if you're unable to act in an acceptable manner, we know that there's a conduct for everywhere. If you are a father, you're supposed to act as a protector. If you're a mother, you are supposed to act as a lover, as a shielder, you know. So if you're unable to act accordingly to what you are supposed to be acting as, you need to also seek help so that you can act appropriately. This is why we're seeing a lot of cases of abuse, because people feel the pressure, but they don't attend to it, and then they start acting negatively out of how they feel. Okay, so we want to get someone professional help. As I said, there's church counselors, there's social workers. Just try and find yourself a place that you're comfortable to just talk to someone about how you're feeling so that they can help you before it goes to an extreme state and you can find yourself, you know, having to be institutionalized and admitted because you need to be under medical control for you to control your behaviors. So I challenge you to always think about how you're feeling, to always think after you're feeling and understanding, and then you act appropriately. Thank you very much.
Cut. Okay, that was great.